Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we need to check back in with Crown Zenith. You see, we talked about Crown Zenith a couple of times, and I told you that, as we were expecting, the prices were starting to come down. Except for the gold cards, which were hanging on in a weird kind of manner. And then a couple of weeks ago, I came back to you and went, hey, good news, dudes. It turns out that the gold cards are also starting to fall. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been following this pretty closely. I've been checking this pretty much daily. And I think we've now gotten to the point where it's honestly kind of hilarious. And I need to remind you, I've told you this a few times, but it really does bear repeating. We are still more than 2 months away from the end of the Crown Zenith releases. Sure, we've seen some things like the Elite Trainer box and the Regidrago and Regieleki collections. The Pikachu VMAX box is really cool. But there's still plenty that hasn't been released, and we're going to be going right up until the beginning of May, where we're getting the Zacian and Zamazenta figure collections. So make no mistake about it, yeah, we've had a bunch released, and that's lovely. We are still quite a way away from the release of the final Scarlet and Violet products, and I, for one, think this is kind of awesome. So we're going to have an update today, and we're going to see how these prices are kind of crashing and talk about how brilliant that is. But I really do think it bears bearing in mind that we're actually still at this stage. We are still a while away from probably the low point, and this, I would imagine, is going to keep falling and falling as we go, and that is really kind of awesome. So if we start off with regular Crown Zenith for the moment, not the Galarian Gallery, the regular Crown Zenith, there was one card which had been kind of stubbornly hanging on, refusing to go too cheap in price here, and that was the full art of Lesser Sparkle. Well, I got wonderful news for you, ladies and gentlemen. It has begun. Now, you'll see here, it's gone from its high of 35 down to 30, so it's still not quite as dirt cheap as we would like, boo, hiss, etc. But if you have a look at the recent solds, the last one that was actually sold was a near mint that sold for $24.55, which means that even though we've not actually dropped below $30 as a whole, we are seeing sales below that, so I do think it is only a matter of time. But bearing in mind, this is like the number one card in the main set of Crown Zenith, and it's kind of hanging on at $30. That, I think, tells you what you need to know. Now, that Pikachu was a very hyped card, and I love seeing the graph of this Pikachu. I'm sorry, the graph of this Pikachu just makes me really, really happy. It was initially sold as a $70 card. Everybody wanted it to be a $70 card and be really expensive and really hard to pull, etc., etc. Nah. What we're seeing here, I mean, it's got a market price on TCG Player of $22, but honestly, like with Elisa, that seemed a little bit high. Because, well, yeah. If you have a look at the recent solds, none of them are actually 22. We got a 20, we got a 21, and we got a 16. A near mint Pikachu has sold for $16. Like I've said, we're going to be still getting Crown Zenith products being released for a little while now. They're still going to actually be coming out for the next 2 months, which is only going to push these prices down more and more as time goes by. And this is just wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. This is probably going to end up as a $15 card. There is a chance that this actually plummets to a $10 card, which is interesting because then you're going to get a lot of the speculators come out. You're going to see a lot of people, and I've already seen a few posts like this, basically trying to buy up like 100 copies of this and then stashing them for the future. Maybe it'll work, but I rather suspect the pull rates are so high and the sales for Crown Zenith are so, well, high that we're actually going to see this is hanging on quite nicely in terms of hanging on to be cheap. I love this, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely love this. There really isn't anything in Crown Zenith, outside of maybe a Lesser Sparkle, which is really hanging on like that. You know, for a while we thought Friends in Hisui was going to be a really valuable card, but it's dropped to like a $14 card now. Yeah, that one kind of plummeted quickly. People were trying to pretend it was a $30 card. It's not. That one seems to have kind of leveled off a bit, but again, it's leveled off as a $14 card, which I think is about as much as you need to know at this stage. And I do just need to give a shout out quickly to the Charizard, because that Radiant Charizard everyone thought was going to be, you know, this stunning, amazing card that was going to really hold its value and be super expensive. Nah. People tried pretending it was a $50 card when it released. It's now got a market price of $7.83, but all the recent solds are like $7.50. So again, I would imagine this to drop to a $6 or $7 card before too long. This Charizard is just not holding its value. And I predicted this all the way along, and it's not some kind of amazing clairvoyant prediction here. It is the pull rates are good, and it's selling by the bucket load. The set, that is selling by the bucket load. And so actually this was kind of inevitable, and that's where we've ended up. But if we want to move away a little bit, away from your regular Crown Zenith set and into the Galarian Gallery, we can have a little bit of a look at some of those cards and see that we've actually got the same kind of thing going on. Now, I will say that the Giratina is still being a little bit stubborn. Started off as an $85 card, rose to a $175 card. It's now sitting there at $150. Now, the good news is two of the recent solds are $135 and $139, but there's also a recent sold for $180. This is still bucking the trend, and there are a bunch of other cards, like the Alessa Sparkle and a couple others we're going to look at in a second, that were, you know, kind of adorably trying to buck the trend, but couldn't do it. And they held on for a little while, and then they started crashing. I will say that in the whole of Crown Zenith, this seems to be the only card which is still holding on. But it is holding on. Like, for a while, we had the Mewtwo. The Mewtwo was kind of holding on. The Mewtwo was trying quite hard. Started at a $110 card, went down to $85, jumped back up to $120. It's now up at $95. Except, as I've told you a bunch of these, it's not really at $95 anymore. Because if you look at the recent solds, we've got $89, $91, and $92. All of which are below $95. And this does happen, you know, we're using TCG Player here. And when you look at the market price, they're basically looking from recent sales. So obviously here, it takes a little bit of time to catch up. You'll see that it's gone down a bunch since the peak, and it's still going down. After a few weeks, this Mewtwo had actually, as you can see from the graph on the screen, this Mewtwo had jumped up higher than it was initially, and there was a thought for a little while that maybe this could kind of hold on. Maybe this could be another one of those exceptions, another one of those cards, which is just a whole bunch more expensive than it should be. But it's not happening, ladies and gentlemen. It is just not happening. This Mewtwo is crashing like the others, and I'm absolutely loving it. The Arceus, for a while, was another one that was holding on quite nicely, and it seemed like Arceus and Giratina might be friends in that they were both holding on together. Nah. The Arceus has started to crash now very nicely indeed. And like I say, the fact that like the Mewtwo and the Arceus are both crashing, but the Giratina is still holding on, that is extremely unusual. You'll see that it started off as a $75 card, jumped up to $120, and it's dropped down to $92. Except, as I keep telling you, we need to look at these recent solds, because it's not really $92. Because the last three solds were $91, $90, and $85, but that was lightly played, so you got to kind of take that one out. So okay, only a tiny bit less than $92, but still less. Which means we can kind of assume they're going to keep falling for a little while, which is absolutely lovely. And if you look at the trajectory of the Arceus on the graph there, this isn't a, oh, which way is it going to go? No, this is a pretty straight downwards trajectory. It's going to carry on for a while. Yeah, I've made the point a couple of times, it's worth making again. These downward trends are only going to continue as more and more products get released. Now, as for the other gold cards, not even close at this stage. Dialga started off as a $75 card, jumped up to $80, and it's now sitting there at $60. But again, the $60, and this one, even compared to most of them, is especially misleading. Because we can have a look there, we got 53, 50, and 53. Like, none of the recent souls are even that close to 60, so I expect this to keep coming down, and you'll notice there's been a very sharp downturn over the past few weeks. And we see exactly the same thing with Palkia. Started off at $75, pretended it was holding on for a week or two, but it's crashed down to 55, and again, the recent souls, 51, 53, and 47. It might look at 55 for now, but it's clearly on a steep downwards trajectory, and if you look at the other recent solds, it's very clear that this is going to keep going down as time goes by. This is not holding on very well at all, ladies and gentlemen. This one is crashing, and then they were like the big five. Mewtwo and the gold cards were the big five that were going to kind of really add value to this Galarian Gallery, but it's not happened, ladies and gentlemen. It's not happened at all. There was the Eretar that everyone kind of assumed was going to be really expensive, just like the Japanese version. Nah, that's tanked from a $50 card to an $18 card. And the good news is, it is actually an $18 card. I've not put the recent solds up because they're all around about $18. But make no mistake about it, you can see there, that's pretty much just a very sharp fall from pretty much the minute the set was actually released and given to the public. This one crashed pretty fast and pretty hard. People tried pretending Suicune was going to be a very popular card, tried selling it for $50 on release. It's now a $34 card, but the recent solds there are all like $32. So, yeah. It's starting to creep down now. The fall has slowed down significantly. But again, we're talking about a card that people really thought was going to be full of value. And as it is, sure, it's still a $30 card for now. But this is one of those situations, it's not going to last. And I keep getting questions and people going, Wassy. Okay, fine, the prices are falling, that's great. When do we buy? Like, when is it the right time? At what point do we turn around and go, okay, now let's go and buy those singles? And the answer is, not yet. Now, don't get me wrong. This is the best time we've ever had for buying singles for Crown Zenith. All right? It's better than it's ever been. Except for Stubborn Giratina, which is still falling a little bit. These are all kind of crashing quite hard, and that's kind of beautiful. But we are still 2 months away from the initial run of Crown Zenith just completing. Just in terms of the products actually being on the shelves, we're 2 months away from the first lot, from all the products being released. And then we can start seeing it fall as much as possible. It's probably going to be kind of the middle of May or into June before these are actually at their lowest value. So if you want to pick them up, it's certainly better now than it was in the past. But honestly, ladies and gentlemen, if you can, and if you've got the patience, and I know you might not be able to, or you just might not want to, I think we are in a situation where it is very much worth holding, because I still think, even as hilarious as this is and how far they've fallen, I still think there's more room for them to go down yet. That's what I think. I want to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy. That's where we talk Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, have a chat with us about Pokemon or anything else, and just generally have an awful lot of fun. Oh, and get shout-outs on the channel like the lovely Tamberlin, who's been a supporter of ours for a little while now and seems to be a very lovely person. So thank you very much for all the support, and for being a very lovely person. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.